no matter how your season ends, there's always a takeaway from the season, whether if it's good or bad. So today, what we want to do, we want to look at all of the eight playoff teams in the NBA that have been eliminated so far, and what is their takeaway on this season, including everything from the regular season to what we saw after that in the postseason, even though it was short-lived. But Bakari is joining the show, and before we get into the takeaways, Bakari, we want to dive into these playoff matchups right away. So starting in the
Absolutely.
Western Conference, here with the 1-5 matchup as the Thunder. Of course, they got off to the series with a 1-0 lead. Then the Mavericks figured them out a little bit. The Mavericks, of course, they ended up winning 2 straight games. And as a guy who's a big advocate for the Mavericks, I thought the series was kind of running away and it was going to be over. But Shea and them had an answer last night. And of course, they knocked down their free throws. The Mavericks didn't. And the young and hungry Thunder were eventually able to tie the series up. Your thoughts on this series outside of the fact that Luke Dort and Luka Doncic are playing football while everybody else is playing basketball?
Yeah, this is definitely, I think, this is probably the first real test for the Thunder and seeing them, rise to the occasion, especially last night, seeing them down late in the game and able to come back and just tie the series up. I mean, they lost home court and then they have to win one on the road. This is a young Thunder team with the youngest starting lineup in the NBA right now. They swept the Pelicans, but the Pelicans weren't at full strength and they weren't really a challenge for this team. As you can see, this team was a lot better than what I would give them credit for. And so coming into this series, I knew it would be a good one. I'd still probably, especially after the way Dallas went up 2-1, I was like, oh man, this might just be a competitive 5-game series. But this is definitely one of those like it's like a coming out party for the Thunder. Shea and Chet and Jalen Williams, I almost call him Jalen Dove,
Right.
Jay Will. They're putting on and showing everybody what this young team can do. And Dallas is in obviously Luka is banged up. And seeing Kyrie it's kind of weird seeing Kyrie take a secondary
I was
role,
going to
but
ask
that's
you.
what he decided to do because PJ Washington has really stepped up to the plate as well. So this Dallas team, is it a team that I think could be in June hosting up the Larry O'Brien? Probably not, but I wouldn't be surprised based off of how they play. And I think it depends a lot on matchups, but I think this is as it is right now. This is just a competitive series between the two of these teams, and I think we should definitely enjoy this because this might be one of those series you look back on in a few years and be like, hey, this is the Thunder coming out party. So,
Yeah. No,
uh,
absolutely. And again, to me, going into last night, I said there was 3 teams that can win the NBA Finals: the Celtics, the Nuggets, and the Dallas Mavericks. Now I'm kind of worried. I don't, seeing how banged up Luka actually is, and the fact that I think Kyrie might be asserting too much effort on the defensive side of the ball, where he can't be that secondary scorer for a guy like Luka Doncic. I saw a stat this morning. Well, I don't remember where, but they said that last night, I think Luka and Kyrie together only put up 27 points, and that was the fewest that they put up in a game in their 77 career games together on the court. So last night, I don't, again, Kyrie needed to be that secondary scorer over these last couple of games, really, because Luka's been banged up and he's just been so good even through the injury. But they just needed that extra punch to get them over the top, and Kyrie just didn't give them that. And of course, PJ, like you mentioned, has been amazing. But as Cavs fans, I do want to ask you about that. What is your outlook on Kyrie? I know he came to this series and he said, I want to be that defensive guy because so many guys like his mentor, Kobe Bryant, were so great on both ends of the court and they were still able to win championships at a high level. Do you think Kyrie is maybe giving too much effort on that side of the ball? Or do you think, well, I guess, do you think he's giving too much effort and he should resort back to being that offensive firepower for this Mavericks team, that offensive secondary piece next to Luka Doncic? Or do you think, maybe he should just continue doing what they're doing and the Thunder they just got the best of them last night?
I think for Kyrie, it's more of the way that his game has evolved over the years. He's playing more team basketball, and I think when he got traded to Dallas, he knew obviously this is Luka's team. He knew Jason Kidd likes defense. They didn't have any defenders last year, crazy bobblehead, but they didn't have any defenders last year. But this year they have a real shot to make it far, and obviously Luka's banged up, so that would mean that Kyrie is supposed to step up. But I think the difference in Kyrie now versus maybe 6 to 8 years ago is that he knows that he can do it in more ways than just scoring, whether it's facilitating, whether it's him, getting really, playing really outstanding defense this series. Obviously, the series is tied 2-2, and he only had like 9 points last night. I do understand that, but I really think that for Kyrie it goes beyond the box score now. I think he's not as worried about putting up as insane stats in a loss versus doing what they have to do to win. And the two games they won previously were games that Luka was still able to get it going a little bit, obviously because he was hurt, and PJ Washington was playing at a crazy level. So I think that going back into OKC, that Kyrie will try and score a little bit more, but I will he put 40 up? Probably not. I think he'll put
Right.
up like a 19 and 9 type of game with 2 to 3 steals.
Yeah. So quickly here, before we move on to the Nuggets and Timberwolves, who do you have winning the series and in how many games?
Uh Man, I think Luca and Lou Dort playing football out there with Luca already hurt. It really is hurting this Dallas team. And as much as I do personally want to see them win too, I want to see Luca and Kyrie get to a conference finals together.
Yes.
But I think the Thunder are probably the better team in this, and because of that, I'm going to say they're going to win in six. I just have that feeling. Thunder in six.
Yeah, no, coming into the series, I said, if the Mavericks won, it wouldn't be in anything less than six because I had so much respect here for this Thunder team. I'm gonna stick with the Mavericks for the simple fact that they've been my team all season. But again, as you mentioned, after last night's game, even when the Mavericks had their role players step up and their star players couldn't get them over the top, it was kind of telling. And now it definitely looks like the Thunder are going to come out on top. But I'll stick with Mavericks in six. But here at the bottom, we always hear the moniker in sports where home field advantage or home court advantage. This series is pretty much the opposite. The Nuggets started off at home, lost both games. They go on the road to Minnesota, and they win both games. So no home team has won a game in this series, and the series is at 2-2. They play tonight here in Denver. Your thoughts about this series? Because in the first two games, it looked like, hey, the Timberwolves are not only going to dismantle this Nuggets team, but this Nuggets team now, they just didn't look as good as they have in, I guess last year when they were so dominant. It looked like this Timberwolves team was going to dominate the Nuggets and go on to pretty much win the NBA Finals. But the Nuggets flipped the switch here when they went on the road in Minnesota, and they looked dominant. It looked like the best Nuggets team we've seen pretty much all season. It kind of looks like the playoff team we saw last year. Your outlook on this series, who do you have maybe closing the deal here? Do you have the Nuggets getting over this hump, or do you have the Timberwolves pulling off the upset?
This is a series where I think it's going to go. The way the Nuggets look and the way they're playing, it looks like it's probably going to be Nuggets in six. It looks like they're not even going to let the Timberwolves get another game. But for the simple fact of, respect for both of these teams, and I know like these teams are two teams that are capable of responding to that type of pressure. I'd say this is going to go a 7-game series, and I'll still probably take the Nuggets in seven. Just giving respect to the Timberwolves and Anthony Edwards, but this has definitely been one of those crazier series where it's like you said, Nuggets get dismantled 2 times in a row at home, pretty much. Especially that second game, and then they go on the road and then dismantle the Wolves in game 3, and then game 4, Anthony Edwards comes out like a man on fire, and they still find a way to win. And I think
Yeah.
the key to that, to these last 2 games for the Denver Nuggets is Aaron Gordon has taken that step as the second go-to option other than Jokic, and
Right.
Jamal Murray kind of went to the tertiary option, and I think it's worked so far because you're asking. Now you got the Timberwolves thinking pretty much like, okay, so who do we want to put our best perimeter defenders on? Aaron Gordon, or do we want to stop, Jamal Murray from even getting going? And I think that it's really creating some confusion because I don't know if you noticed last game. At the end of the game, they had obviously Rudy Gobert was matched up on Jokic pretty much the entire night, but then they switched and put Cat on Jokic and put Rudy on Aaron Gordon and try and be more of a help side presence, and they still couldn't do anything off of that. So I think that running that offense through Aaron Gordon and Jokic is really because they're right there on the court. Like Aaron Gordon is in that dunker spot and Jokic is in that high to mid post area. It's really created some confusion for that Timberwolves defense. And in the same way, it's also opened up shooting for the Nuggets. So,
Yeah.
I think the Timberwolves are relying on scoring options other than Anthony Edwards. I think Cat obviously has to step up. But outside of those two, you were getting a plus if Jaden McDaniels was scoring. You're getting a plus if Nickeil Alexander-Walker was scoring. So I
Hmm.
think some of those role players got to step up a little bit more. But Cat really, Cat has to play like all-star, and I believe Anthony Edwards will continue to do that. So.
Yeah.
Nuggets.
I believe I'm going to go Nuggets in seven as well. For the simple fact that, again, I think the Timberwolves have that guy, and they're going to be able to get at least one more game in the series. But you touched on it there. You touched on Rudy Gobert and how, in the first two games that they, Gobert, Cat, and Nas Reed, they did such a good job of just being physical with Jokic and tiring him out. And the second half came around in games 1 and 2, and Jokic and this offense just kind of didn't look like they had, enough left in the tank to close the deal, excuse me. And now in games 3 and 4, that I don't know if Jokic is just superhuman or it was definitely a combination where the Timberwolves just got less aggressive and the Nuggets took advantage of it, right? And Jokic, of course, closed the deal on the road in those two critical games. But I wanted to ask you about it because you touched on it. For Rudy Gobert, again, there's no one man that can stop Nikola Jokic, right? Because again, three-time MVP now, and of course he looks like he's on the way to his second NBA championship. There's no one man that can stop him. But are you expecting a little bit more now from the three-time MVP or three-time Defensive Player of the Year, excuse me, in Rudy Gobert here in this best of three series from here on out?
I am because he's so aggressive. Like if he plays exactly how he did, especially in that game four, or I'm sorry, yeah, game four, where he was aggressive, but it's like he was aggressive and looking for a shot, but if he didn't have it, he wouldn't really show that he wasn't looking for it. And he just like that pass to Aaron Gordon on the baseline, I think that was at the end of the second quarter. When they tried to double him, that was an insane type of play. Like that's what Nikola Jokic does. I think if he's that aggressive and trying to find his shot to where he keeps the defense guessing, well, is he going to throw it cross court, no look, or is he going to go up with this fadeaway or little post hook? I think that if he continues to play like that, he's proven why he's an all-time center already, and
Right.
that'll definitely be on his list of accomplishments. That's for sure.
Well, two series are tied there. We have one series tied
Oh, I
here.
do want to add something real quick. My bad.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
The Nuggets only won because the NBA rigged the league and gave them 5 off days and didn't suspend Jamal Murray. No, I'm playing. I just had to throw that out there for all the
The
NBA
heating pad. That's actually crazy that a guy like Pat Bev. Now again, he threw a basketball at a fan, right? But Patrick Beverley is going to get suspended 4 games going into next season. But Jamal Murray got suspended no games in the playoffs. You might be onto something there as far as them favoring the Nuggets. But in the Eastern Conference, one series that is less interesting, I guess more so Game 4 was more newsworthy because of what was happening around the court compared to what was happening on the court. But Celtics Cavaliers, we're Cavs fans. No Donovan Mitchell and no Jarrett Allen yet again here in last night's game. And Boston took advantage, even though the Cavs, they looked good and they actually had the lead at some point in that third quarter. And of course, they stuck with it. But the Celtics just had too much and eventually closed the deal, going up 3-1. I don't think I can speak for both of us. There's not much hope going, further into the series because Donovan Mitchell, even if he comes back for Game 5, he has a calf strain, and just with the player that Donovan Mitchell is, he needs that for his explosiveness. Whether if it's getting to his shot or, of course, getting to the rim, there's not much hope for us here going into Game 5. But I guess I'll ask you as a Cavs fan: is there any hope we can get another game in this series? Because we know if not, a lot of things are going to change here in a couple months.
No, I think our best chance was in front of the home crowd last night, and I obviously I think there were some mistakes made by the Cavs. I mean, and I think the defense down the stretch was pretty good. I think some mistakes were made, obviously, but that just comes from not having your best 2 players on the court. I will say it felt like the whistle was kind of crazy because I don't, I obviously, watching the game, I expected the Celtics to win. But then you put it in a situation where if you're down, if you're getting to a 2 or a 3 point lead, you're cutting it down to a 2 or 3 point lead every time, and then the Celtics haven't scored in
Always.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
Somebody comes down and fouls it. Like I don't know if you're paying attention to the little ticker at the bottom. It'd be like, oh yeah, the Cavs are on like a 14-0 run or a 14-3 run, and it's like all 3 points that come off of free throws. It hasn't been like a field goal. So like, I think last night was definitely their best chance. I think the Celtics, just fell into that trap of playing down to their opponent like they usually do. I think that they'll definitely close it out at home. They had a sense of urgency at the end of the game. I think that really showed that they weren't going to try and lose that game last night. But at the same time, I think the Cavs, I think they played the series better than they thought. It's after that game 1. I think all these other games have been played better than they thought. I think JB has unfortunately saved his job for at least the start of next year, depending on how this offseason goes. So this is like you said, it's not an interesting series. It's kind of going down how we thought. You know,
I'm just
I guess
happy we
that's
got a game.
what was that? Yeah, I'm glad we got a game, especially on the road. I kind of still have doubts about the Celtics, is just going against them and playing them and seeing how they play. Like it's not impossible to beat them, obviously. But
Right.
I think last night, like you said, more things going off the court. LeBron being there, I
Yeah.
think. Hey, I
Is
think
there anything
LeBron
that's
being
going to
there.
lead from that? Do you think maybe the Cavs mortgage their future to try and get Bronny, so Bron kind of has to come back for a third stint?
Listen, I saw two things. I saw two things. I'll say two things. The first thing I saw was the last time LeBron was at a Cavs game when he was like linked with another team or on another team was when he came back for Big Z's jersey retirement,
Yeah.
and he came back that summer. So they're like, oh, he might come back if he was at the game. I think it'd be intriguing for him. I think he looked at the game and like, oh, this is a team that took probably the eventual champions or a championship caliber team to the brink without their two best players, and I think
Right.
um LeBron being there also helped for maybe Donovan Mitchell. Maybe Donovan Mitchell sees the type of ovation. Obviously, he's not LeBron is from Cleveland or from Akron, everything. But
Right.
maybe Donovan Mitchell looks at LeBron and says, "Hey, he got that. What he was able to do for this city and type of love they have for him, even when he's currently playing on another team, is kind of crazy. If I
Maybe
can
he
just kind of
stays.
build that type of reputation and stay here, then maybe it works out."
Yeah, I didn't really think about that aspect of it. To me, I honestly think it's just a publicity stunt. I think it just is a way for him to put pressure on the Lakers to, hey, I got options kind of thing. But again, LeBron has always had that luxury where he could say, I mean, hey, if he wanted to go play with Kobe in his prime, he could have, because LeBron holds that much gravity and that much leverage across the association. But again, I'm just happy we got a game. Maybe that gives us some hope going into next year. But again, we see too many inconsistent games and flashes from guys like Mobley and Darius Garland,
Yeah.
especially over the last year and a half from Darius Garland. We get one good game and the 15 next are kind of subpar at best. But
Mobley has kind of
hopefully,
stepped up. I'll give him that. I'll give Mobley that. He's kind of stepped up this series, but
hopefully, yes, yes.
it's been in a way like he hasn't really improved his offensive game. He's just put up more shots.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, the aggressiveness is key. I'm just interested to see how frustrated Donovan Mitchell is because he has one more year on his contract. Do we try and say, hey, when we traded like what four unprotected picks for him, let's go out there and trade him to get two of them in return to trade him to New York and maybe some solid role pieces, or do we try and convince him to stay one more year and then see how that plays out? Interested to see how that plays out, but a lot of questions for the Cavs, especially if we go out in five. But for the Celtics, we got to have that dominant game. Like, as a
yeah,
Cavs fan, obviously I want us to come back and have another 3-1 comeback. But for the Celtics, you got to come out. You got to dominate. You got to beat us by like 25, give us no chance, and really prove, hey, we're the best team in the NBA because so far they've had a favorable or I guess favorable path so far. Facing a Heat team with no Jimmy Butler, then you face a Cavs team that probably shouldn't be there, but they had Jared Allen out for the whole and the entire series now, and Donovan Mitchell missed the last couple of games of the series if the series were to end in five. And then you go into an Eastern Conference Finals against a Pacers team that doesn't have that top 10, top 15 level player, or a Knicks team that's banged up, and that's a good way to put it. Celtics definitely have a favorable role, but we got to start seeing them be dominant. For that Knicks and Pacers series, though, very quickly, tied at 2-2, Jalen Brunson and OG Anunoby are banged up. The Knicks also have a rap sheet of injuries outside of those two guys. But as far as game 5 here in New York, that I believe they play tonight, do you think the Pacers have the formula to beat this Knicks team? Because they've slowed down Jalen Brunson now for 2 straight games. Or, do you think the Knicks can pull it back together behind the Garden and, of course, close the deal?
I think this is a series that's going to be decided by whatever team's the home court team.
Which happens to be the Knicks.
Obviously that means that it's going to be Knicks in 7. I think the Knicks will be able to. Yeah, I think anytime they go back in front of that Madison Square Garden crowd, especially how revved up that crowd is to get to a conference finals and see their team performing the way it is, like you said, and they're banged up. I think it gives them a little bit more pep in their step. Same thing when Indiana goes back home and plays. This is a rivalry at the end of the day. These teams don't like each other. I think that's apparent. That's evident. And I think it's hard to get more contribution from the Knicks players, especially if everybody's hurt. You're asking for the 5 starters and the 2 players tips plays off the bench to give maybe you need 115 points. You got to get 150 points out of 7 guys. So it's tough. I think the Pacers do have more to offer than the Knicks right now. But like you said, what Hallie are we getting? Are we getting a Hallie that's going to drop 6 points and 5 assists
Right.
and shoot 2 shots from the field and then complain about how hurt he is? Or are we going to get the Hallie that's going to drop 33 points on 13 to 16 shooting, with 10 assists and act like nothing didn't happen. So I think these are two teams that are very unpredictable. So it's this is a very interesting series because I think this is I don't think either one of these teams will have a chance to beat the Celtics as is. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And you touched on it there. It's really just a who can make it out of this series. I think it's a series that we might remember a couple years down the line, but especially if it goes seven. But I mean, I will give the edge to the Knicks. I'd rather see them go on and face the Celtics because the Pacers, well, at the same time, the Pacers have like the widest range on a game-to-game basis because if
yeah.
they land their shots with how fast-paced they play, they can literally sweep anybody in the NBA. And I'm serious when I say that because of how fast they play and how many shots they get up. But I guess I want to ask you this. If Nembhard doesn't make that crazy shot, again, we're looking at hindsight here. If Nembhard doesn't make that crazy step back shot, do you think this series is still alive, or do you think the Knicks would have probably swept them?
I think the Pacers would have been able to get that game 4.
Yeah.
I think that was inevitable. I think getting one on home court, it was something that was going to happen with this Pacers team. I do think that. I don't think it would have been a sweep. I think it would have been 5 games. But I also want to ask you this: Do you think the way that Tyrese has played the second half of the season, and even like including now, has really has changed the way you rank them or you view them, or
No,
you just
it
say
has to, right? I mean, it's like, well, I'll ask you this: is it as far as like point guard rankings, or just overall, like how we view him across the league?
it could be either one because
Yeah,
like this like part of you say like, oh, it's beginning of the season, he was just on that like historical tear, and so like it made sense that he would dive down back to that, to the type of player he
or yeah.
is. Or do you say like he should have been playing like that all year long, and him not playing like that even though he's hurt like everybody else in the league is right now, has kind of
I
made
don't think
him
well, to answer your question, I don't think it's fair to say that he should have been playing at that level the entire season because
true.
we don't view him as like Jokic, right? This is a guy that has never been an all-star before, and then he came out and he's playing at an MVP level. And at one point in the season, I think throughout the first month, this Pacers team was technically the greatest offense of all time, and Tyrese Halliburton was the reason they were. But again, they did get Pascal Siakam. He had some injuries. But this second half of the season, just when I look at the season just as a whole, especially these last couple of games in the series against the Knicks, it does definitely change how I rank him. I think I had him as like the eighth point guard in the or eighth or ninth point guard in the NBA going into this year. He might be pushing that top 5 range. I think he's definitely past a guy like Trae Young. He's past a guy like De'Aaron Fox, who last year, of course, De'Aaron Fox had an amazing season. Tyrese Halliburton's probably in that top 5 range now, and as an overall aspect, I mean, is he a top 25 player? Maybe, maybe he's top 30. I would have to go back to see where I had him, but definitely, I definitely look at him in a different light now. I still don't think he could be the number one on a championship level team, but definitely he can lead fun teams like this and make it far into the playoffs. I just can't see him getting any farther than, again, the Eastern Conference Finals. I can't see him being the guy on a championship team, even if he has great scores around him. Hopefully that answers your question, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But 4 interesting playoff series, and we could definitely see 3 of them are tied, so 3 of them are definitely in question, and we could see those go a variety of different ways. I'm happy we have a lot of variety at this point in time. But then we talk about the takeaways, and these are the 8 playoff teams that have already been eliminated in the first round. As Cavs fans, we're holding out a little bit of hope. Maybe we should have kept them or put them on this list because the inevitable is coming. But we'll start here with the Milwaukee Bucks because I want to start with the highest seeds going all the way down to the lowest seeds that have been eliminated so far. The Bucks, for the second year in a row, Bakari, are the highest seed to be eliminated in the first round. Last year, they dealt with some injuries. They were the first seed, of course, and they lost to the Miami Heat. This year, they lost to the Pacers. As you see, you have a lot of their highlights there. And the biggest thing this year about the Milwaukee Bucks, and I guess the takeaway from me is, was the head coaching change the right decision? Because you had Adrian Griffin, you were 30-13, and of course your offense was, not as great, but your defense was there. But then you make that head coaching change to get that extra offensive punch, or at least you thought that would happen. And you bring in Doc Rivers after being, again, 30-13. It didn't work out. And this team, of course, lost in the first round. But again, no Giannis. And Dame was hurt for a couple games, and they relied on their tertiary guy, and Chris Middleton, to be Superman. And to be fair, what was it, game 3 or game 4, where he had those
Yeah.
crazy shots down the stretch? And he was, but he did his best. They just, again, didn't have enough to beat that Pacers team in the first round. The last thing I'll say here is that this team, really, since they won the championship, just with injuries, they've been super unlucky, especially in the postseason, with especially Giannis getting injured late down the season. But what is your takeaway from this team? What is your overall just takeaway from this season? Do you think it was a successful year one with Damian Lillard?
I um I I think Dame didn't play up to his expectations. I think by many people it was still a little bit questionable why they went out and traded for him. I understand you want to keep Giannis happy. Giannis signs the extension after you go get Dame. Dame signs an extension and all of that. But at the same time, you had something that was working beforehand, and you say, well, last year Giannis gets hurt. Well, guess what? He got hurt again this year, and having Dame didn't change how many get like it didn't change the outcome of it. It was the exact same thing that happened last year. And
Right.
I think with Giannis, I think he's getting to that point where it's like his style of play might be affecting how he recovers, what type of injuries he has. Like it's no longer, oh, I'm gonna run through people for 82 games and average 33, 12, and 7 with 2 blocks and a steal and a half, shooting 60% from the field, and I'm gonna do that for 16 wins in the playoffs and win a ring. It's no longer that. He has to be more manageable. He has to get a softer touch around the rim. He has to get some type of post move or a mid-range back that he can get in. Obviously, we know Chris Middleton hasn't been that consistent. He did way better than I thought he would in the
At this
playoffs.
age, yeah, yeah.
And I just really think that this is a team you go and get Damian Lillard, who Dame's been to the Western Conference Finals once and got
Yep.
swept. Dame's been in big moments, but we're talking about a guy whose biggest moment is hitting the game winner in the first round of the playoffs and waving bye to the other team. And that's no disrespect to Dame, but that's
Twice.
yeah, exactly. So this is somebody who I think Dame is a good player, but this is somebody who's been a product of he hasn't had the team around him to really have expectations, and now you're giving him expectations at 33, 34, and saying, hey, you got to go play with Giannis, and obviously he had a down year, and then he says, well, I was never really able to figure it out or get it going. Well, yeah, you're saying that after you lose in 5 games to a 6 seed and you were the 3rd seed, so
Right.
I think that regular season wise it could have went better, and obviously postseason wise it could have went better.
Yeah, I mean the biggest question I have to answer is what do we do with Dame, right? Are we happy with his year one performance? And do we believe he can be that secondary guy to get us over the top going into next year, especially now with Giannis coming off of another lower body injury, something they got to look into. But of course, 2 first round exits with maybe the best player in the world on your team, not ideal. But then we talk about the Clippers. Of course, in the Western Conference, they were the only home team in that series, or I guess the only team that was the higher seed to lose in the first round. But this is a team that has name chased, and I will give them a little bit credit as James Harden was a guy that was kind of just out there. And why not? James Harden is still an incredible player, and he could be a facilitator for us. Why not bring him in and he could facilitate for our star guys? But yet again, it's another first round exit. And this year, Kawhi Leonard got hurt yet again. So to me, I think going forward, my takeaway is you have to pick your poison, right? You whether if it's you have 4 first ballot Hall of Famers. Russell Westbrook, I think you can still keep him as a bench piece, but we're mainly talking about these top 3 guys you see on your screen. Pick your poison, right? Do we want to keep Kawhi? Do we want to keep Paul George? James Harden? All 3 of them? What combination do we want to keep? If we want to trade them, who do we trade them to? It's pick your poison time here for the LA Clippers. And if you end up moving them, how aggressive do we want to get, or do we want to kind of reset a little bit? Your thoughts here about the Clippers? I know you're a big Paul George fan.
Yeah, I think this is a team that, or obviously the expectation on the Clippers is pretty high every year, and you got to give some blame to the players for not being able to perform up to that level. Last year it was Paul George was hurt and he didn't get a chance to play, and Kawhi plays that game 1 versus Phoenix, and you're like, oh man, Kawhi is the best player in the world. Then he misses the rest of the series, and you got
Right.
Russ out there playing like it's 2016. But before last year, it was Paul George that was always available during the playoffs, and Kawhi wasn't. And you build this Clippers team
around
with
Kawhi.
Kawhi as your best player and Paul George as your Robin, and then you built the rest of the team around Kawhi, really, with Paul George being that other superstar that's supposed to be there to help out. The way it's been over the years is that Kawhi isn't even going to play, so now you have Paul George playing with the team that wasn't specifically built around him. It's good, but
Yeah.
it wasn't built around him like in Indy or like even OKC. It wasn't built for Paul George. So now you're telling him, okay, we're playing some of the best teams in the world now in the playoffs. Go see what you like that year that what was that 2021 where he took Pat Bev and
And
Pat Bev and Reggie
A young
Jackson all the way to
Shea.
the he took him 6 games to the Eastern or to the Western Conference Finals, and you're like, well, these are his two best players, Terrence Mann too. Like,
Yeah.
like you're asking Paul George to go out there with that really. And this year he had more help. He had James Harden, but still, it's like James Harden and Paul George are on this level. Kawhi's supposed to be on this level, especially come the postseason. And you're asking the two guys on this level, hey, go out there and win
Be
us
superstars.
4 games against Luka and Kyrie, who at the time weren't as banged up, while also, having, like who else is going to be consistently scoring outside of those two? And I think the Clippers this year, if I were them, I keep Paul George and James Harden, and I build a better team around them to say, okay, we'll get you somebody who can consistently hit that corner three, or we'll get you a more consistent big. And I know that's tough saying that about Kawhi because obviously we know the type of great player he is when he plays, but how does he play? How does he meet the requirement of games played over 65 and then still doesn't play the playoffs? You really can't make that up. I think
His
Kawhi
body's
doesn't
just not
have much.
made for it.
I was about to say, like, I don't think he has that much left in the tank as far as his career wise. Maybe he signs like a 2-year contract and he's just one of those players that retires at 34, 35 because, he has everything he needs. So I think the Clippers, know what they have to do. I think if they pull out or execute that plan, it's going to be completely, up
Yeah,
to.
a lot of tough decisions ahead for the Clippers. But if you're Steve Ballmer, what I was getting out of your thing, do you recommend moving off of Kawhi, seeing what you can get, and building around Harden and Paul George? Or do you just say, hey, we'll take Kawhi when we can get him, and we'll try and just better this roster and build it around James Harden and Paul George more so than just building it around Kawhi?
I'd say, see what you can get for Kawhi and
Yeah,
build it around James Harden and
around.
Paul George. Because even if you try and build it around them with Kawhi there, and he's not there a lot, but he will, he might be there at some point. It's like you still have assets you're leaving on the table, or you still have minutes for somebody who could be getting them on the table. So I like. You knew the Clippers didn't really have a lot to work with when they started PJ Tucker. I think that was the last 2 games. It's like, they're just trying to figure something out because, yeah, Paul George and James Harden didn't have the greatest games, but in comparison, you're going against a better team in Dallas. Like, Paul George and James Harden don't have a good game. Well, who else is going to step up? Nobody. Norman Powell went down 20. So.
Well, I mean, if they want to move Kawhi Leonard, I think for cap reasons, Jared Allen is there, of course, because he doesn't want to play with his ribs. But as
I
of
was thinking
now,
I was
man,
thinking Darius Garland.
Darius Garland, I've come off the bench next to Russell Westbrook. I think that's honestly a
Yeah.
perfect fit.
Yeah.
Okay. But then we talk about the youngest team in the NBA, the Orlando Magic, and they took the Cavs. Well, I'll say this: they had no expectations in this first round. Coming into the year, there was many outlets like ESPN and even Bleacher Report. I hate to say it, but they had this Magic team as an outsider looking in. They had them as like a play-in 9-10 seed, and this is a team that goes all the way. They worked their way to the 5th seed after being in the top 3 range for the majority of the year. And they, of course, took the Cavaliers, a veteran Cavs team, to 7 games. And of course, in that game 7, I think Jamal Mosley outcoached himself. And of course, Franz Wagner did not show up at all. And of course, that's a big reason why they didn't get the job done. But they do need some outside shooting, and that is my takeaway for this young Magic team. Whether if it's Klay Thompson, which would be nasty because I can't imagine him in this jersey, or if it's just somebody else, go out there and find that, find that diamond in the rough like the Knicks did with Dante DiVincenzo. Go out there and find that guy that can put the ball on the floor, but also be that knockdown shooter for you. Overall, that would be my takeaway from them. But your thoughts here about the young Orlando Magic
Yeah,
outside
I'm
of the
pretty.
best theme song?
I feel like I definitely made this type of prediction that they would make the playoffs. I
I
think
did
it would
too.
have been either towards the end of last year when we were kind of doing a recap, or at some point. I know I said,
Yeah,
"Hey, the Magic are one of the better teams post All-Star break. I'm talking about a year ago. I was like, they're one of the best teams post All-Star break. They look like next year they can make some noise like the 2021 Cavs. I might not have said the 2021 Cavs, but I do remember I was like, they could make
I
some.
remember you saying it. Yeah.
Yes, I just wanted everybody to know that I was a little bit on the wave a little bit beforehand. But I think this Magic team, they're definitely fun. They're defensive, they're gritty, and they are not afraid to talk their stuff, especially no matter if it's a win or a loss. I think they have the right mindset for a team that's young and that could go farther. I think Jamal Mosley, like you said, he outcoached JB until Game 7 when he outcoached himself. And I think that they also didn't have a Donovan Mitchell.
Right,
You
right,
know,
right.
that it really hurt them. But I yes, this team does need shooting. However, I don't think Clay is the right person to get. I think, if you get Clay, you're just going to have to overpay because he's going to be like, well, I'm a 4-time champ. I've been there, done that, and it's guaranteed I'm going to get you what you need. Well,
Right.
we have a track record of the last few years or so of Clay, just not meeting that expectation of just being able to hit his shots. Obviously, he went scoreless in the last game Golden State played. So I think they need somebody a little bit younger, but also a little bit older than what they have right now in their group.
Right.
Like you said, like a Dante D in New York. I think this is a team that they also need a point guard. I think they can go out and get like a D'Angelo Russell type of player. Maybe they even trade for like Brandon Ingram, give them a little bit more wing scoring, even though they have wings right now. I think you don't give up on Franz. I think obviously, you like the production you got from him and Paolo this
Games one
year.
through six.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think this is a team that has a lot going for them, and they just need they don't need a major roster overhaul this summer. They just need some, one or two players that can consistently shoot, like Max Strus and George Niang, and then they may need like a lead guard like Darius Garland, and all they need to give up in return is like Jalen Suggs and Paolo. I think you
I
give up
mean,
those.
we'll just take Paolo. I mean, he seemed to be a problem there. I mean,
I,
can't shoot. He can't shoot. That doesn't help the problems.
I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, you give
Uh-oh.
us Wendell Carter Jr. and Franz, we might be able to make something work with that. No, I'm just kidding. But this is a team, like I said, they just need maybe a consistent wing and then maybe a backup to come off the bench and hit those threes. And I think if you can go target a guy like D'Angelo Russell to run the offense, and he's also a vet and has done it in probably the biggest market in the NBA right now in the Lakers, I think will be a very competitive and fun Magic team for some years.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We cut out a little bit there, but it ended up speeding up. So you'll have to see how that plays back when we watch the video. But for the Magic, again, you touched on everything there. And again, it was completely satire. We know Paolo Banchero is one of the few untouchable players in the league at the moment. But young, fun, they just need time to mesh. For the Big Three Phoenix Suns, if you want to hear me talk about it, of course, I did a live stream with Bleacher Report just a couple weeks back. Slight flex, but of course, it was a dream come true. But for this big three-headed monster, they name chased, and unlike the Clippers, where things kind of just fell on their lap with James Harden, this is a team that went out of their way to get a guy like Bradley Beal, and they name chased, and it didn't work. And they're the newest rendition of a team that, they have proven name chasing over team fit is never the way to go. But they have $150 million wrapped into this big three of Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, and Kevin Durant. This is a team that doesn't have a true point guard. They lack quality depth, and they have so much money in this starting lineup, of course, with Yusuf Nurkic, and then they just paid Grayson Allen as well. And then they fire Frank Vogel. We go out there and we think, okay, maybe they go out there and they go get a young coach. Maybe they get someone who changes the mindset of this team. They just go out there and get another young or another older veteran head coach that wants things his way in Mike Budenholzer, a guy that was notoriously ran out of Milwaukee. And if they didn't win the championship, he would have been gone 2 years earlier.
Yeah.
I don't understand exactly what they're doing in Phoenix, but your thoughts here about a team that just got swept by a team that did have a good roster constructed team.
I didn't get why they traded for Bradley Beal in the first place. I know they wanted a third star, but I feel like there were other options they could have went, or just don't get a third star and build a better, a deeper roster. Bradley Beal is somebody who for the past 2 to 3 years has not even, I don't think he's even played half of the games for the Wizards. And obviously it's Washington and they want to lose and they're trying to get a high draft pick every year. But you got to also take a look at some of these injuries too. Like they're not just those injuries. I hurt my hand. I'm going to miss the next 15 games while the team loses. These are injuries that actually kept him out. And then, lo and behold, this year he can't find the court really until post All-Star break. And then, you'd say, oh, well, we're going to go against this Timberwolves team that has defense, and then Anthony Edwards has them in prison. And he couldn't do anything. I think obviously the number one thing for the Phoenix Suns team is they need a true point guard. They need somebody to facilitate the offense, because we saw Devin Booker and Bradley Beal try that. I think it was game 2 versus the Wolves. Devin Booker had like 7 turnovers because I remember watching, he couldn't get the ball past half court, really. Like Jaden McDaniels and Anthony Edwards were really harassing him.
Non-order, you mean?
Yeah, non-order. Yeah, man, non-order. That's a great show. That's must-see TV.
Yeah, no. Do we see a Chris Paul reunion there in Phoenix? He's a free agent. He needs a home, and of course, he's looking to ring chase. Does Phoenix have a reunion here? And just maybe this means that Bradley Beal comes off the bench as a 6-man, which is what I've recommended so far.
I think they should. I think they should take a look at Chris Paul.
Trey Jones, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of guys on the market that they can go get for cheap and say, hey, just play like you play wherever you were, and you don't have to do much. You just gotta pass the ball to the star players and occasionally knock down 8 to 9 shots and help us win. And I think that I really do think that's all they need, is just a true point guard and more bench depth, younger bench depth too.
I'll throw this out there because I talked about. I'll get your quick thoughts on this. When I did that video for BR and I talked about different destinations that Kevin Durant could go, I recommended, if Kevin Durant wants out, what if you trade him to OKC? Of course, he has a reunion in OKC. He can try and reconcile with the fans. But would you, maybe get a package of like 4 to 5 first-round picks, which is basically what you traded for Durant? But then maybe you also get like J-Dub, the center, who could be a young, quality big man for you, and Josh Giddey. If you're the Suns, would you do that? Let's say Josh Giddey, Jalen Williams, the center, and 3 first-round picks. We'll say that. Unprotected, of course. If you had to trade Kevin Durant.
If I had to trade Kevin Durant, if I have to trade Kevin Durant, I think I got to go into it knowing that I won't be a really good team after the trade, depending on who I get back. And I think that's one of those packages where you kind of replenish the first round picks that you don't have until like 2030, right, and you get younger guys. But I think we talked about it the other day, like who's better, Donovan Mitchell or Devin Booker, and I think the consensus answer was Devin Booker is probably the better player, but in terms of quality as like leadership and being able to really will a team,
better talent, we'll say.
Yeah, exactly. More talent, more especially on that offensive end. Like, it's just like in terms of being able to will a team, though, it's probably Donovan Mitchell, because if you really think about it, has Devin Booker really done it without anybody there? Like, Bradley Beal would be there in that Josh Giddey, Jalen Williams, the center type trade. But, I really don't think that's a team that's going to go far, especially out in the competitive West, because, nowadays, DeMar averages 25 points a game and, they barely make a play in. So I think getting rid of Kevin Durant is one of those things, you're not going to be very good after. So this team has a lot of different ways they can go. But it's just, I would not take this job as a GM. That's for sure. Hey, do you want this job?
James Jones says everything is sunshine and rainbows. They're perfectly fine. They just need to unlock Kevin Durant, because no team has unlocked Kevin Durant before. So that's something they got to do. But every once in a while, Bakari, you run into some highlights on your feed, whether on TikTok or Instagram. You run into some OG highlight tapes. And this is just something I'm throwing out there because they were once teammates in Brooklyn. It didn't work out. But hey, if the buyout situation happens in Brooklyn, maybe a true point guard could be a guy like Ben Simmons. Just throwing it out there because, of course, I saw some old highlight tapes and I said, hey, maybe, he still has that potential. He could still be him. I was never a big Ben Simmons believer, but again, he was. You see those highlight tapes, and it's like, man, he was supposed to be the next LeBron James.
Yeah. Hey, I played NBA Live 19, and Ben Simmons was like the 5th best player in the game. So, hey, maybe he can restore the action. But
right. That's.
I wouldn't even want Ben Simmons can stay in here. I wouldn't even want Ben Simmons to step foot in Cleveland as a Cavalier. So
yeah, no, I'd rather keep George Niang. No, I'm just joking. But then we talk about the King, LeBron James, the guy that was basically he came to Cleveland and he said, I'm coming back home. I'm going to come back and win another championship. Well, at least that's the delusional way. That's the delusional message I got out of it. But LeBron and this Lakers team, of course, LeBron's 39 years old. His son's entering the draft. He wants to play with his son. But of course, when we look back at this season, it's another season where you lost basically. It was in better fashion this year. 2 years ago, of course, you got swept in the Western Conference Finals. You were in those games that were tight, but you couldn't get over the hump. And it was the same song and dance this year, where you led for 70% of the series against the Nuggets, but you lost in 5 games. That just doesn't add up. We don't ever see that. But
Yeah.
overall, when we look at this past season, Anthony Davis was very healthy. You see the notes in the bottom left. They won the inaugural in-season tournament, the first to ever do something. And I'm sure we'll have that, in LeBron's GOAT debate argument for whatever reason. And LeBron became the all-time leading scorer in the NBA and professional basketball when he passed that guy overseas, or whatever his name was. But your thoughts here, your thoughts here about the Lakers, and what's your takeaway from the season? Of course, they got rid of Darvin Ham. Is JJ Redick the next coach? Or I guess just your thoughts about their season.
If I was JJ Redick, I wouldn't take the job just because taking a job with LeBron James on your team, especially as your first head coaching job, is always tough. It's always a lot of pressure. Obviously, like even like somebody like Mike Brown, who got his first head coaching job with LeBron, and then it took him all the way up until 2 years ago to get another head coaching job. Now, that was probably his choice with Golden State and all of that. But I think this is a Lakers team that this is a team that should probably look to get younger and start to blow it up. Obviously, I think if I'm Jeannie Buss, if LeBron wants to go to Cleveland, I let him go to Cleveland. That's his home. That's his home team. That's the team he played for. Let him go to Cleveland. It's not in the same conference, and after that, I probably look to get rid of Anthony Davis, see what I could get some younger players and some picks for him. And obviously, the Lakers aren't used to periods of time where where they aren't making the playoffs, they aren't winning, or they don't have a main attraction there in LA.
Right.
But I think that, why continue to waste years off of LeBron's career where he's continuously saying, well, it's just basketball. I don't really have a lot left to prove. You're not getting that same energy from him. And Anthony Davis is kind of taking on that same type of attitude ever since he got to LA. And yeah, they have a ring. Yeah, Anthony Davis has a ring, but it feels like Anthony Davis has never really had that dog in him. Or at least not for a stretch of, not for a
Unless
long
he was playing the Warriors in the playoffs early in his career.
Yeah, I mean, but that's really like the last time that you really was like, oh man, Anthony Davis is, he really has that dog. It feels like he's had a very lax attitude since he's gotten to LA. It's almost like Anthony Davis is like, I don't have to prove anything to anybody. And it's kind of weird because it's like you're a one-time champion. You have 0 DPOYs, you have 0 MVPs. Yeah, you've made all defensive team, maybe you've made all NBA, but what have you done outside of that if you didn't have LeBron? That's a whole different situation.
Yeah.
But if I'm the Lakers, I would look to get younger. That's probably not what they're going to do. They're probably going to re-sign LeBron James, keep Anthony Davis, get rid of D'Lo. It's
Reconstruct
tough.
this roster in typical LeBron fashion.
Exactly. With a lot of players who are going to perform, like they'll probably go get like Sam Hauser and just
Chris
a
Paul
lot
is
of
going to be a Laker, I believe. I believe Chris Paul is probably going to make his way to be a Laker on the
probably
low.
so. Probably so.
Uh,
I just think that a lot of players who are performing right now in the playoffs at a good level are going to end up in the Lakers at some point next season, and then they're going to underperform. Like I called it when Spencer Dinwiddie got signed by the Lakers. I'm like, he's not going to be good for the Lakers. I mean, what did he do with the Nets? And everybody's like, oh, it's Spencer Dinwiddie. Spencer Dinwiddie continued to do conditioning for the rest of the year. So
basically,
yeah.
you're describing Gabe Vincent and all the money that they poured into Gabe Vincent.
Yeah, he had a sore ankle for 78 games. So great.
I guess breaking news here, not that it's, too, crazy, but the Lakers have narrowed down their head coaching search to JJ Redick, James Borrego, who didn't have much success there in Charlotte, but again, in his defense, who has? And of course, Sam Cassell, old point guard there for the
I think Sam Cassell would be a good one.
Yeah, he's been around for a while, and of course, he's already in the LA area, so he understands the athletes, motivations, all that good stuff. But of course, it's going to be one of those 3 guys, seemingly. The last 2 teams we're going to talk about are the 76ers, and of course, there's the Miami Heat as well. But for the 76ers, this is a team that lost in the first round to the New York Knicks, and I guess the positives coming out of this year is that you found your guy next to Joel Embiid. This might be the best overall fit that you've had next to Embiid as far as a secondary role player or star player, rather, in Tyrese Maxey. But again, this is a team that wasn't healthy at the right time. Joel Embiid got banged up. And of course, you can argue maybe he came back from injury way earlier than he should have, saying that he missed a lot of time after being, again, probably the runaway MVP for the second time in his career. Your thoughts about this team? Is this process over, or do you think maybe they can continue now with Tobias Harris gone and his lump sum of money where he gave you 0 points in a game 7 or game 6? Do you think that they can finally go after and maybe get a Paul George? Do you think that gets them over the hump, or do you think that they're just going to continue to be in limbo and early playoff exits?
I think that they can finally try and make something happen. Obviously, one of the things about watching the Sixer team, especially against the Knicks in the playoffs this year, is it was like, yeah, man, it's a dogfight between Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey and Jalen Brunson and whoever the Knicks had. It was like a dogfight. But then you're looking,
Yeah.
you're like, okay, Buddy Hield might have a good game. Kelly Oubre might have a good game. But like, where's the consistent third player to step up? And you're like, oh, Tobias Harris is out there running around, but he's not doing anything. And I think now you can go get a third. So you can go get it. You can go throw money at a Paul George. You can go, throw money at like a couple of different people. Maybe you go get like a combination of like Clay and somebody else to
Right.
kind of fill more spots. Yeah, I think they have a lot of creativity with their money this year, and I think Joel Embiid actually rising to the occasion this year in the playoffs and Tyrese Maxey doing so as well is a great stepping stone. I know Joel Embiid's like 30 already, so he's a little bit older, but if he could just stay healthy and you can go get a third star, whether it be Paul George, whether it be like Klay Thompson and like a D'Angelo Russell or somebody like that. There's a group of players that can play consistent basketball. I think you can make deep runs. And I think one of the things they should look at is making sure that they're not just the fit for Joel Embiid, but also for Tyrese Maxey. I
Yeah.
think Tyrese Maxey, he's going to be on the court more times than not, more times than Joel Embiid over the course of a season. I think you have to suit his play style as well, because if you do run into a situation where Joel Embiid isn't available in a playoff game or isn't available for the playoffs, you still want to make sure that Tyrese Maxey still has, some type of competition around him. So I think that this Sixers team has, all the pieces to try and build a team that can get to the conference finals, to the finals. But whether they make that, I actually do like Nick Nurse as a coach for them. I
I was
think
gonna
he
say, yeah,
I think that they kind of got screwed out of a couple of games there in that series with New York, but I feel like between the Knicks and the Celtics, a lot of teams aren't getting some of the calls that go their way. Rigo bearing them.
you're
But
right. Yeah, no, I
yeah,
mean, I love Nick Nurse as a coach. Like you talked about there, I think he had a tremendous season with this team, especially when Joel Embiid went down. But
yeah,
I think, hey, you got to bring back Kelly Oubre. I think he played really
yeah,
solid for you. Buddy Hield, I think, had his moments. I think, especially just being that spacer, that elite shooter
yeah.
for this team, they probably want to bring him back as well. But again, I'm interested to see what third star they can bring in. But again, it's bad when some nights Nick Batum outpays a guy that is making $35+ million in Tobias Harris. I was once a Tobias Harris lifer, but I left that train a long time ago, and I'm not
Don't
going
worry,
back.
Tobias won't even be remembered as the worst contract. It'll be Darius Garland. No, I'm playing.
I've never seen a point guard reach his peak at 22 and be washed by 24. I don't think we've seen that before. So correct me if I'm wrong here, but two teams left. I'm sorry about that. But the New Orleans Pelicans, of course, you see their big three in my eyes here on this team. And this isn't even including a first-team All-NBA defender in Herb Jones. Of course, you have Zion, Brandon Ingram, Trey Murphy. CJ McCollum is still solid in his own right. Herb Jones, of course, is an All-NBA defender in my eyes. This is a team that I think their takeaway this year is that Zion stepped up when it matters most. I think the takeaway is that you can trust Zion in those big moments, in those big games. And if Zion didn't get hurt in that game against the Lakers, it's hard to believe that they don't win that game because of how dominant he was down the stretch. But to me, I think it's finally hit a road where you got to trade Brandon Ingram, whatever it's for. Maybe entertain trading CJ McCollum because he kind of disappeared second half of the season. But I think definitely you have your core of Jose Alvarado, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, and Zion. What do you put around them? Of course, we both of us like Willie Green as well. Your thoughts and your takeaway from the Pelicans this year. How much work do they have to do, or what moves do they have to make to get to the top?
A lot of the moves they are like one of the moves they have to make is not what they have to make. It's what Zion has to make, and I think he became really committed to making that decision during the season. But he'll have a whole off season to do it. Is getting his body right, staying in shape, making sure that none of these knick-knack injuries continue to bother him and kind of put his career on hold and rob everybody of the special moments that we know he's capable of, especially in the postseason. And I think that this year when he could really taste it that he was about to be in the playoffs, you could see how mad he was and upset that he was that he wasn't able to finish that game versus the Lakers. And he kind of I think this was the first year that he kind of truly felt that he let his team down. And I know he maybe have felt like that 1 year where he was out, or maybe these past couple of years. But I think him being on the court with those guys and being in that atmosphere really made him think like, oh man, I really let these guys down. I could have, I shouldn't have got hurt or things of that nature. And I think that he has that mindset now that, that mindset we've been waiting for Zion for all this time. Like, okay, I can dominate and I know what I can do. I just have to be on the court to do it. And like you said, I think Brandon Ingram, I think he's going to be moved. Obviously, I think it was all Eastern Conference teams that were interested in him, like Philly,
Cleveland, probably, I'm
Cleveland.
sure.
Yeah, I don't know what we give up for him, like Isaac Okoro, Max Strus, George Niang, and I don't.
Probably, bias aside, probably would be probably Garland, saying that New Orleans kind of needs that lead guard. I don't want to see that happen, but I'm just throwing it out there.
Well, if we keep D Mitch, I'd rather keep D Mitch than Garland. I think. But going back to the Pelicans, they're probably going to get rid of Brandon Ingram and bring in. I don't know. I don't know what their roster construction will look like after trading Brandon Ingram
Where
and
could he go,
CJ.
honestly? Like, not to mean to cut you off, but where
No,
could he go? Like, I can't really picture him anywhere else.
yeah, I couldn't either. I couldn't
Maybe
picture
Philly,
CJ.
like you mentioned.
I think Philly would probably be the best option for him. I think if he wants to, Brandon Ingram is somebody who's going to miss some games during the course of the regular season. I think if he wants to be able to comfortably miss those games and not have to rush back, why not go play with an MVP and an All NBA level player in Tyrese Maxey, and then come in and deliver in the playoffs? I think that'd be the perfect situation for him. CJ, like I don't know what this Pelicans roster will look like after trading those two players, but if you really think about it, those two players barely showed up when Zion were like that, those playing games and everything. And that Pelicans team looked, they looked like they could compete. I think obviously having Zion on the court full time and getting some pieces back, I think this Pelicans team will be fine. I think Willie Green, the more seasons, obviously he's a young coach, so the more seasons he's going to coach, the better he's going to get and probably be one of the top of the game type of manager coaches. So I'm excited to see what this Pelicans team does do though.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, Trey Murphy was their best player in the playoffs. That shouldn't happen when you have Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum on the roster, but that's
Yeah.
just how it went down. But again, a lot of interesting decisions coming up for the Pelicans. The last team here, of course, Emo, Jimmy Butler, you see, but there's no other picture I could have grabbed, right? But you see their big three, of course, Tyler Hero. A lot of questions about where he might end up this offseason. Last year, this team was basically had him out the door trying to get a guy like Damian Lillard. And we thought, hey, it was a done deal. Damian Lillard was a Miami Heat. That didn't happen. The Miami Heat go to the play-in this year. Jimmy Butler gets hurt and kind of, squeak into the playoffs. Somehow they got a game off of Boston because they played down to their competition. My question this offseason is, I guess my takeaway is, even if Jimmy Butler does go down or if he gets hurt for a stretch of games, do you have enough around him to win those big time games? I don't know if you do. Of course, you got a game off Boston, but again, Boston played down to their competition. What can you do this offseason, whether if it's bringing in a third star, trading Tyler Hero, or just bringing in more quality, proven depth? What direction do you go for the Miami Heat to continue to build up this roster and keep them as title contenders? Because their window isn't getting any bigger, Bakari. It's only getting shorter. And trading for a guy like Terry Rozier, giving up a first round pick for him to not play in the playoffs, that's not ideal start. But your thoughts here about the Miami Heat?
Listen, I think like obviously Bam played really well in the playoffs, in the play-in. I mean, there's not a whole lot you can do when you're going against the Celtics, who have
All right, everything.
the production that Bam gives, but in five players. Tyler Hero, obviously, you could say trade him and get another player, a more consistent player for him, or maybe a two-way type of player. But I'm thinking more so in the future for this Miami Heat team because, like you said, their playoff window isn't getting any bigger. Jimmy's what 35
Yeah,
already,
yeah.
and he wants a max extension. Jimmy is how much longer can we expect? Like, we all know Jimmy coasted in the regular season, but how much longer can we expect him to be able to coast in the regular season and really dominate the playoffs like he's been doing? Obviously, we saw it even last year. The first two rounds you give him versus the Bucks and versus the Knicks. Okay, he plays good, but then you play the Celtics, and it wasn't Jimmy, that it was
Max
Max
Strus.
and and who was it, Caleb Williams.
That's the reason why he got a $64 million contract from the Cavs.
Exactly. And it's like, how much longer can we expect Jimmy Butler to continue doing this before we say, hey, do we want to get younger? Do we want another type of star? I think the Heat have to look Jimmy Butler in that eye, or kind of give a real evaluation to him, because yes, he's brought them to the finals along with, a lot of key guys who have stepped up, whether it be Gabe Vincent, Max Strus over the years, or whether it was Goran Dragic the 1 year and Tyler Hero as his rookie year or second year coming off the bench doing that. Yeah, he's made a lot of deep playoff runs, but I think that if next year was the same type of trajectory where Jimmy rests during the regular season, and then you say, hey, we're going to make the play-in, we're going to be a 7 or 8 seed, I don't think they make it out that first round or even make it out of the play-in any longer. Jimmy's going to be 36. Bam's going to be a year older. I think the production from Bam is going to continue to be there. I think Tyler Hero is somebody, I mean, he's still young. Maybe you say, hey, he can get more productivity, but I think as of right now, what they need is, they probably do need to get rid of Tyler Hero and go get a true point guard. Maybe you say, hey, Chris Paul, can you come operate this offense? And then you have Terry Rozier, Jimmy, and Bam. And then you say Jaime Jaquez takes that second year jump and becomes that type of player that you can kind of see sometimes. So I think
I'm
that
hoping
you have a lot of questions.
I'm hoping that they don't see that jump in Jaime, because I was going to ask you a hypothetical here. Again, we're Cavs fans and we're delusional. And if you're here at this point in the podcast, of course, just you got to listen to this fantasy. But if we're the Cavaliers, and let's say Donovan Mitchell says, okay, I understand that I got hurt late in the season. Season didn't end the way we wanted. I want to go to the Miami Heat. Would you accept a package of, let's say, Jaime Jaquez, Nikola Jovic, and 2 first-round picks?
Throwing Tyler Hero, I would. I think they would have to if Donovan wants.
Yeah, probably. Well, probably. We probably get Rozier instead of Hero for salary cap reasons. Just saying that the Miami Heat would probably rather keep Hero, and sometimes.
I would do that. I think I would do that, because then those are really, really quality players that can either come off the bench or you could put in the starting lineup that are going to be more consistent than Max Strus or George Niang, or whoever else we may have coming to Karras sometimes.
Right.
We have coming off the bench, and then I think you say, hey, Evan, take that jump we're looking for. Hey, Jared, take that, whatever. I think I guess I would do that. I think my only problem with that is a lot of what, especially with these Donovan Mitchell trade rumors, is that if I'm the Cavs, why do I send him to an Eastern Conference team? Why do I let him go to the team that he wants to go to? He's been here for 2 years. Yeah, he's done big things in the 2 years.
We traded 6 first-round picks for him, basically.
Exactly. So why do I say, hey, I'm going to trade you to the Heat, or I want to trade you to the Knicks, who just happen to be in our same conference? No, I either keep him and play that contract out and let him willingly walk in free agency, or I trade him to a Western Conference team and get some of the things that I gave back for him. That's what I do personally. I don't understand trading him to, especially teams that are, kind of built, like the Knicks are kind of built up as a rival for the Cavs right now. The Heat, not so much, but they who knows, maybe that could happen. I just don't see that. So, hey.
Yeah, no, absolutely. A lot of different places he can go, but hopefully he reconciles, stays home, and we can figure it out. Maybe we can get that second or third year, or that second jump, I guess we'll say, from guys like Garland and Mobley going forward. But that is episode 174. Of course, we just passed 17.6 thousand subscribers. Very close to 17.7. Bakari, of course, if you guys are still here at this podcast, he was here for a long time, and he's the biggest reason why this channel is at where it's at. But, of course, we appreciate any time you can hear and join the show. But playoff talk for the next couple of weeks. So if you're for free, you want to join the show, of course, the invitation's always there. But any last thoughts before we get out of here?
It's always great being on a pod. I especially when I'm not on it for a while, I feel like there are a lot of things I got to get off my chest about these fraudulent teams. No, I'm playing. It's just always good to talk about, whether it's football or basketball. We've done both. So, it's always happy to be on here and seeing the growth of the channel, and, from being on this channel to watching you on the Bleacher Report live stream. it's always crazy. So we just want to continue to growth, and we thank everybody for being supportive.
Man, absolutely. We're gonna have a lot of fun stuff coming up here, whether if it's in the playoffs or, of course, in the off season. Off season is when we start doing drafts and all that funky stuff. But until tomorrow, where we have some fantasy football stuff, I'll see you guys then. Stay happy, stay healthy. Get out of here.